You know that moment. You're at a family dinner or scrolling your feed or just talking to a coworker and someone says it. You're basically throwing your money away renting, and something in your chest tightens because maybe you've thought about it too. Maybe you've done the math in your head. Rent times 12, rent times the years you've lived there, and the number feels sick. It feels like proof that you're behind, that everyone else is building something and you're just paying someone else's mortgage. So you start feeling guilty about a decision you didn't even fully choose. Maybe you can't afford a down payment. Maybe you move for work. Maybe owning right now just doesn't make sense. But the guilt doesn't care about any of that. It just sits there, whispering that you're falling behind. Here's the problem. Nobody ever shows you the actual math. They just repeat the phrase like it's a law of physics. Renting is throwing money away. But that phrase is doing a lot of emotional work with almost no numbers behind it. So today, I want to actually show you the math nobody shows you. Not to tell you renting is always better, not to tell you buying is always better, but to show you what's actually true, because the real answer is more interesting than the slogan. My name is Jack. If you've ever felt behind because you rent, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Most people think this is a rent versus buy debate. It's not. It's a spend versus invest debate wearing a housing costume. Part 1. Where the myth comes from. The renting is throwing money away idea comes from one simple observation. When you rent, you make a payment every month, and at the end you own nothing. When you buy, you make a payment every month, and slowly you own a house. That sounds airtight, but it skips something important. It compares the wrong two things. It compares renting and owning nothing to buying and owning something. What it doesn't compare is what happens to the money that renting frees up, because renting isn't just an expense. Renting is often cheaper than owning the same property, and that gap between rent and a mortgage payment doesn't have to disappear. It can go somewhere, and where it goes is the entire point that gets skipped. Part 2. The hidden costs of owning nobody mentions. Before we compare anything, we need real numbers, not vibes. When you buy a home, your mortgage payment isn't pure equity. Especially in the early years, most of that payment is interest, not ownership. On a typical 30-year mortgage, it can take over a decade before more than half your payment goes toward the actual loan balance instead of interest. Then add property taxes, add homeowner's insurance, add maintenance, which experts often estimate at around 1 to 2% of the home's value every single year. A leaking roof doesn't care about your 5-year plan. Add closing costs when you buy, typically 2 to 5% of the purchase price. Add selling costs later, often another 6% in agent fees. And add the opportunity cost of your down payment, the money that could have been invested somewhere else entirely. None of this makes buying bad. It makes buying more expensive than the sticker price suggests. And most renting is a waste arguments never mention any of it. Part 3. The real math. Let's run an actual scenario. Person A rents an apartment for $1,800 a month. Person B buys a similar home with a mortgage payment of $2,400 a month once you include taxes and insurance. That's a $600 monthly difference. Person B builds equity every month. Person A builds nothing in the property. Case closed, right? Not quite. What if Person A takes that $600 difference and invests it every single month in a simple index fund? At a historical average return of around 7% after inflation, investing $600 a month for 20 years grows to somewhere around $300,000. Meanwhile, Person B is building equity too, but slower than people assume once you subtract interest, taxes, maintenance, and selling costs from the equation. This doesn't mean renting always wins. It means the comparison isn't renting equals zero, buying equals everything. It's renting plus investing the difference versus buying and building equity. Two completely different competitions than the one everyone assumes they're having. Part 4. When buying actually wins. Now let's be fair, because buying does win in real situations. Buying tends to win when you plan to stay in one place for a long time, often 7 to 10 years or more, because that's roughly how long it takes to absorb the upfront costs of buying and selling. Buying wins when the local rent-to-price ratio favors ownership, meaning rent is close to what a mortgage would cost anyway. Buying wins when you have the discipline to actually maintain the property and treat it like a long-term asset, not a lifestyle upgrade. And buying wins simply because it forces a kind of savings discipline that many people don't have any other way. A mortgage payment is hard to skip. An investment contribution is easy to skip. That single behavioral difference matters more than most spreadsheets admit. Part 5. When renting is the smarter move. Renting tends to win when your timeline is short, when your job or life situation could change in the next few years, when the local market makes buying expensive relative to renting, or when tying up a large down payment would leave you with no emergency cushion at all. Renting also wins when you actually use the flexibility it gives you, meaning you take the money you save and put it to work instead of just spending it on a bigger lifestyle. Renting without investing, the difference isn't a financial strategy. It's just spending with extra steps. The flexibility only pays off if you actually use it. Part 6. The psychological trap. So why does the phrase, renting is throwing money away, get repeated so confidently? Because it's simple, it's emotionally satisfying, and it matches what owning feels like from the outside. Home ownership looks like progress. You can point at a house and say, "That's mine." You can't point at an index fund the same way, even if it's quietly doing more work. There's also pressure from culture, from family, from the idea that owning a home is the marker of adulthood. But a slogan isn't a financial plan. And the truth is, most people who repeat this phrase never ran the actual numbers for their own situation. They're repeating a feeling, not a calculation. Part 7. How to actually decide. Here's a simple framework. First, calculate your local rent to price ratio. If annual rent is below about 5% of the home's purchase price, renting is often mathematically favorable. If it's well above that, buying may make more sense. Second, be honest about your timeline. Under 5 years, renting usually wins. Over 10 years, buying usually gains ground. Third, check your discipline. If you rent, will you actually invest the difference, or will it quietly disappear into lifestyle spending? If the honest answer is that it'll disappear, buying might protect you from yourself. Fourth, protect your cushion. Never let a down payment wipe out your emergency fund. A house you can't afford to maintain isn't an asset. It's a liability with a nice paint job. Closing story. Let me give you a quick story. Two friends, Sarah and Priya. Same income, same city. Sarah buys a condo at 28, stretches her budget to do it, and spends the next 5 years covering repairs, special assessments, and a mortgage that eats most of her flexibility. Priya rents the whole time, and every single month, she automatically invests the difference between her rent and what Sarah's mortgage costs. 10 years later, Sarah has built solid equity in her condo. Priya has a 6-figure investment account and total flexibility to move for a job she loves. Neither of them made a wrong decision. They made different decisions, and both of them actually followed through on their plan. The real gap was never rent versus buy. The real gap was between people who make an active plan and people who let a slogan make the decision for them. So if you've been feeling guilty about renting, let this be the thing that resets that. Your rent isn't wasted. What would actually be wasted is doing nothing with the difference, no matter which side of this you choose. If this helped you see it differently, hit subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and let me know in the comments. Are you renting, buying, or still figuring it out?